Hello, everybody, and welcome to Tech Tuesday. I'm currently at home, sitting in front of my home setup as we're all on lockdown. Um, I have plans to show you a wide range of things, but I think tonight, just because of being stuck at home, I am going to take you through the process I'd go through for editing a photo. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch to my screen, and I'll just take you briefly through the process. Going to be going through some of the photos that I took while we were in the USA with Pastor John and Pastor Sharon on the Chariots trip and the prayer conference trip. So yeah, let's switch to the screen. Okay, so as you can see, I have all the photos that I've taken open in a viewer window. A lot of these photos have already been used and edited down. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go and find one that hasn't been edited yet and just do a very quick edit for you to see what it looks like from before and after. And so the one I have selected is number 668. We took a few. I'm just going to switch viewing panes over here. I'm using a program called Adobe Photoshop Lightroom Classic. And what this is just purely a photo editing software. And so I'm going to go from my library, which shows me all of the photos, to the develop pane, which enables me access to edit and have finer control. This software that I'm using is available to everyone. It is a paid-for software, and everyone is able to get their hands on it if you are so inclined and do take photos. So this photo I've selected was taken in a town just outside of, I can't actually remember the town's name, but this is a little town called Paintbank, and we spent one morning driving our motorbikes up there. All the people from South Africa, just a group of us from South Africa, and yeah, we took some photos along the way. It was very cold that morning. You'll see a lot of us are dressed up quite formally. Right off the bat, what I can say about this photo is it's very raw, which you can see. The sky up here on the top is very, very light, too bright almost. But it was very misty that morning, so it kind of actually serves its purpose. But what you'll also notice is that it's very dark on the bikes. They were very dark bikes, all black and so on. But yeah, the idea is that all the details still exist there. I can zoom in and you can start to see some things. So yeah, on the right hand side here we have the editing panel, and this will enable us control of the image to do what we need to do. This is called a histogram. This basically shows us how well or how accurately the image is exposed, and then we have more controls here. I'm not going to go into depth about this now. I think in the future, if there's interest, I'll go into more depth. So I'm just going to go through my process very quickly, and then you'll have the option to see, you'll be able to see what I go through and what we do for images. And this will be a very quick edit, and so this is if we need to get if we need to get photos out quickly for you to see, and if we want people to be with us where we are at any time, this is the process we go through for various images. So once they've pulled in, we have access to it here. The first thing I'll do is there's an effect. There's a lens corrections panel over here, which enables all lenses warp the image a bit, and so this just allows us to correct that. It picks up what lens was used, what camera was used, and it adjusts for that automatically. The computer knows exactly. I just turn it on and off, and you're able to see on the corners here. You'll notice that it's darker when I have it off, and when I turn it on, it lightens it up. That's called vignetting. All cameras and lenses do that. It also removes some of that warp. So once I've done that, I'll then go into making sure that the images broadly is exposed correctly. So with this exposure panel slide over here, I'll turn the image up and down until I get to the exposure that I want, and you'll see when it gets darker, you obviously can't see anything. When I take it down, you obviously can't see anything, and when I take it up, it begins to reveal a lot of details that maybe weren't initially thought to not be there. So you can now see inside the bikes, there's actually a lot of detail in the bikes, and you can actually start to see people's faces. And so those are all thoughts about when taking the image, so that I'm keeping the darks. I'm not losing any data in the darks. I'm keeping it there and ready for use in post-production. I'm not trying to get the most perfect photo in camera. These are obviously quite tricky conditions to take photos in because the mist is very bright and the bikes are very dark. So I try to keep data available for me to use in post-production in the bikes, but also keep data available in the sky or on a building up here. And you'll see on the roof there's actually some data for me to work with in the future. With this being a light editor, I'm not going to get too into depth with this. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to turn the exposure up a bit, just so I reveal a little bit more of the bikes and give myself some room to use. Once I've done that, I'll come into the shadows and the highlights. And what I generally tend to do is I'll just adjust these quite dramatically to get the image exposed to where I want it to be exposed, with both the shadows and the highlights. If I pull the highlights back, you'll see it starts to reveal more of the trees over here and over here. So that's with it all the way taken down. Obviously this was a misty morning, so I'm not trying to look to get away the mist. Once that's done, I have control of the blacks and the whites. This will give me even more control over the things that are happening in the bikes, well, specifically the black areas and as well as the white areas. Show you the sky here, pull that back and give me more access. You can see it very clearly in the roof. So I'm going to pull that down. And so now what I'm doing is I'm creating a very flat image. There's no contrast available to me, but it gives me a lot of wiggle room to work with the image. I have color now. I want to talk about composition a bit. The composition's all thought about having the line of the road draw your eye in to the bikers, the church, the speed limit, the American flag. That's all thought about when taking this photo. I will get to that in the future when I talk about actually taking a photograph. I'm just going to go into the crop panel over here and crop out some of the image. There's some things I don't like here that are not pleasing to the eye, and this would be it. I think the telephone pole or electricity pole, I'm going to get rid of that. Actually, I'm going to get rid of a bit of the sky, just give it better proportions. Once I've done that, I select it, and now we have a better cropped image. After that, we have a couple of things. We have texture, which I will show you in the grass. Over here enables me to give things more detail. It adds amount of texture, adds contrast in the midtones, technically speaking. But this is just used to add some more finer details to the image. We then also have an image, have a slider for clarity, and if I adjust this, you'll see now we start to get into like the dramatic effects. Obviously this doesn't look good at all, whereas this makes it too contrasty. It might look good on the church building over here. This chapel but on the grass over here, it's just not very pleasing. We'll pull that back. I generally tend to get more into those towards the end of the edit. And then the saturation and vibrant sliders I use to add a dramatic amount of color, and saturate the image or remove saturation. And depending on the style of the edit, I'll choose how we want to do this, or how I would use these sliders. But for now, before we get too deep, I'm going to just leave those where they are. We then have the tone curve, and the tone curve is used to add contrast. You can add contrast in colors, or you can add contrast in the overall exposed image. So you can see here, this is making the dark areas darker and the light areas lighter. I'm not going to get into that now. What I'm going to do at this point is get into the colors, and that's over here. So there's obviously an amount of colors that exist in an image, and so what I'm going to do is just adjust those colors just very gently, subtly, but add a significant amount. It'll add a significant amount of flavor to the image. So if I go back into my thought process of when I took the image, it was a very beautiful time in America at this stage, and so what I did was, or what I remember from that time, is all the colorful leaves, green grasses, so on. And what I'm wanting to do is try and convey that feeling and the emotion, and the feeling of what it was like to be there, and try and convey that through the picture. And so those colors were all in the red, orange and yellow area. So I'm just going to adjust those quickly. The red, you'll see it won't adjust much, but if I take the saturation of the reds up, you'll see that I'm adjusting the flag. Yeah, so what I'll do is I'll actually take that up quite a bit just to give the flag a little bit, and I'll show you a before and after of these. And then in the back here, there's some orange trees, there's some orange leaves here. If I take this up, you'll actually see they all get brightened up, get a lot of saturation. I can brighten them up here, so you can now see the leaves in the foreground starting to come to life. That's all thought about during this process. I then have yellows. You'll see there's some, like the sun landing on some of these, I don't know what these are, like brushes of the grass. And then in the back here, there's some yellows that exist as well. And so what I'll do is I'll adjust the color for the yellows, and then I'll adjust the luminance, which is the brightness of that particular color. I'll take it up and down to where I see works well with the image. And then the hue over here enables me to make the yellows a different hue, so give them more yellow, more green in this case. And so obviously with it being autumn, I'm wanting to make it slightly more orange. So these colors exist here, it's just slightly altering the tint of those colors. And then in the greens, obviously the grass is green, and so I'm able to make the grass very green, unnaturally green, or have no color at all. So I'm going to just give the grass a little bit of love, and I can make it more green or more orange. So obviously with it being autumn, I'm wanting to make it slightly more orange to look like that's the season we're going into. I'm not going to make it too bright, obviously that doesn't look right, but if we just bring it back down to the normal range, you'll see right. There's not a lot of aquas, blues, purples or magentas in here, so I'm actually going to just leave those where they are for now. I'll go into the details tab, and I'll just take sharpening and I'll adjust it. So on the church here, you'll see that it gives me a little bit of a preview to the sharpening of what is being sharpened. And then we've already done lens corrections, and there's a couple of other things here that I may get into later. I'm not going to do any transforming as well. So now we have, broadly speaking, a flat image. By flat, I mean there's very little contrast happening here, which I'm going to add now with this slider over here. But we have, for the most part, the colors we like. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just first check the temperature of the image, which allows me to make the image more blue like that, more yellow like that, and obviously that's way too much. But what we'll do is we'll come down and we'll balance it to what is right. And then the tint allows us to add more. I actually want to take that down a bit. Add more pinks or more greens, and so that we're just going to adjust to where it seems right and what fits the image. Somewhere around there. And now, once I add the contrast slider, you'll see the image will really start coming together, and it will really start to look like something. I'm just adding it as I go. Obviously, that's way too much, but contrast essentially just gives us nice dynamic range, and it allows us to. It just gives the image a lot of personality, and so that's with no contrast. You can see it's just very flat. So as soon as we start adding contrast, it comes together quite nicely. Some of the areas are still quite dark. Some of them are a bit too bright. But for the most part, this image is done. We'll just adjust the saturation to get the feel that we want of the colors that we've chosen. And so we have an edited image. Just to show you the things that we added, I'll add a tone curve just to give it a little bit more of a feel. These will be personalized and stylized looks that don't serve the purpose of all images, but definitely add an effect for personal taste. So this is with and without. You can hardly see these changes. The tone curve, the color one, zoom out. That's without color. And that's with the color. You'll see the trees and the grasses come to life. The detail, you're not going to see this too much, but that's without the sharpening and with sharpening. So a full before and after of this image looks like this. This is before, and that's after. Before and after. And so that image would be ready to go for the most part. We could get more serious about it and more in depth with the editing if we needed to, but for the sake of delivering the content quickly, this would be more than ready to go onto all various platforms. Actually, I think this image would be quite nice in black and white for the classic look. In most cases, I will send out both color and black and white for the sake of just having an option. And that is photo editing in a nutshell. Thank you.